forget to like and subscribe.
And hit the notification bell
so we can go to college and get more knowledge.
Welcome back in the place to be with the CBDC Assets Group. Thank you all for being a part of the group. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's supporting us over on cyberhodlgear.com, purchasing all of our CBDC Assets Group merchandise. Thank you again. Your support means a lot. These are some of the highlights from David Schwartz talking about the $130 trillion cross-border payments and his liquidity focusing token, XRP, and how Ripple and XRP are ready. They just need a adoption to handle every financial institution's transaction in seconds for less than a penny. He says that they've built a better mousetrap with RippleNet and XRPL, and that if you build a better mousetrap, people will beat down your door. So it's only a matter of adoption. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that Belango Dango.
Let's get a warm round of applause for David Schwartz, CTO of Ripple.
So a very brief introduction on David. He is the CTO at Ripple. He's one of the original architects of the XRP ledger as well. And prior to Ripple, he was the CTO for Webmaster Incorporated, which was a software developer based out of Santa Clara. He's developed an encrypted cloud storage and enterprise messaging systems for companies like CNN, as well as the NS.
I should say that I teach two classes pretty regularly at SLOAN. One is on global capital markets, and the other is on consumer finance and fintech. And Ripple is probably the only company that gets mentioned in both. So it's a pleasure to do this. So given we're at the FinTech conference here, I'd kind of like to start at the beginning, David, if I may. I'm interested broadly in the role of FinTech in breaking down sort of old profit centers and disrupting finance a little bit. And so I'm curious about the origins of Ripple, sort of the founding story and the early days of Ripple and how it was set up sort of originally largely as payments mechanism internationally. And so can you go back and tell us about the beginning of Ripple and how it got started and rose originally?
And so what we started thinking was, first of all, even if you imagine this sort of Bitcoin maximalist world where Bitcoin takes us, well, you still have to get there, right? 99% of the world's value is in existing financial systems. And so you need to build bridges, even if you're a Bitcoin maximalist who think people are going to use Bitcoin for everything. Because if you're not, you obviously need bridges. Otherwise, what good is a new technology if it isn't connected to where the people are, where the money is, right? You rob banks. It was from his bank robber who asked why you rob banks. And that's where the money is, right? You got to go to where the money is. If you try to sit somewhere and wait for the money to come to you, that won't work. But our first strategy was the same bottom-up strategy that everybody else was using, because we kind of didn't realize in the early days that we actually needed a strategy. In the beginning, we were kind of driven by what we had with the hand that we were dealt. So we started working on eliminating proof of work and coming up with something that was sort of more decentralized, faster, and something that would have bridges built in, something that could connect to existing systems. And I think we were very inspired by this sort of liberating feel of the internet. Prior to the internet, there were huge information gatekeepers. Like if you couldn't get something printed in a newspaper or on TV, you basically couldn't get it out to people. And cable access existed, but it was minor. There was no way to have information influence if you weren't part of the sort of old guard, or could you influence the old guard? And the internet changed that. It's kind of sad that recently it started backsliding, right? New information gatekeepers have emerged. And I think people are upset about that precisely because they had that. That's really a return to the way it always was, right? But once people have a taste of something that's sort of fairer and more equal access and open, that's what they want. And so that was our earliest strategy, was build a decentralized, censorship-resistant payment system focused on payments that would support multiple assets. Because even if you thought the world would eventually converge on a single global asset, they certainly need ways to get there, and they certainly aren't there now. And what's kind of interesting looking at where Ripple was and where it's come, it's almost come a little bit full circle. So we then focused almost exclusively on payments. We basically split into an enterprise payments portion and a sort of non-enterprise, sort of open source, bottom-up, decentralized payments section. That's still, Ripple has these two business units, Ripple X and RippleNet. And we've kind of a little bit come full circle, because I think in the past year and a half or so, we've really started more embracing what's going on in the cryptocurrency communities in ways we haven't, particularly because of issues like climate concerns and so on that have sort of forced us to say that we don't really feel like we can sort of sit back and not participate in that ecosystem. And I think also we've been a sort of part, we've also like, there's what we've done ourselves, and there's also like being a part of a community that's trying to accomplish a large number of different things. Like there are a number of other companies and foundations that are building on top of the XRP ledger. And but I still think, in my heart of hearts, I still think it all comes back to payments. I can talk more about that later, but I still think that like payments are an unsolved problem. They're a huge unsolved problem, and I think we still need to get that right. They still suck. So I mean, there's $130 trillion like cross-border payments market. And the existing system, so we initially just said, let's go to these institutions and let's talk to them about using a cryptocurrency. Like our very first, the way we kind of got into that is like, let's talk to them about using a cryptocurrency. We weren't thinking about like, our thought of disrupting the industry was to get them to use cryptocurrency for settlement. We thought, hey, that makes a lot, and it still does. Like that's still you'll hear people saying, Bitcoin could be a great means of international settlement, and they're right. And so we talked to these institutions and we said, hey, like how about using a digital asset for settlement? And what we ran into was technology that's 40 years old throughout the system, or worse. Like, you log into your bank's website, or they have an app, and it's all glitzy and nice. Everything looks fantastic. You drag things around, and it's all nice. And then you go one or two layers down, and it's like you got into a time machine, right? And you wake up, if you're lucky, in the 70s. We have settlement based on old reel-to-reel machines where they couldn't settle in real time because if the reel that had your transaction was on the bank system, it couldn't be on the system that communicated to like other banks, because that was a physically separate machine that someone had to carry a reel of tape from. So they said, like, there's no way. Like, for example, they said, well, like, when we make a payment, we don't even know the path the money's going to take. We don't know how much the fees are going to be. So there's just no way that we could settle at that time because we don't know how much we need to settle for. And we're like, ugh. We face palmed and we said, okay, I guess we have to rebuild like the plumbing. We have to rebuild the lowest layer. And I have to say, that is still an inspiring idea to me. Like, one of the things that I found so inspiring about Bitcoin was this idea that don't build on the incumbent systems and the existing systems that are legacy and decades old and that enrich other people who are heavily invested in them. Like, use the technologies from the bottom up that are the most suited to the problem, that are modern, that are, like, for example, like most of the existing payments infrastructure is based on cryptography that predates public key cryptography. Like the thing that secures everything on the internet, the thing that like enables you to not have to worry. Like I can access Amazon and know I'm talking Amazon without having to have without having to have a password that Amazon and I share. Like the whole security infrastructure didn't exist in the payment system. And so they said, like, there's no way we can settle with the cryptocurrency with the software we have. Like, you're gonna have to Swift. It's not like Swift is making a whole bunch of money, right? Swift is basically almost like a money neutral thing. It's not like we wanted to take over this lucrative business. We just needed we needed things to work better in order for us to like get people to use a cryptocurrency for payment. And so we built this system, RippleNet. And we looked at all the problems that we brought the failure rate down, we brought the settlement time down. Even it's crazy, but end-to-end messaging prior to a payment is revolutionary, it's ridiculous. Like you go to a bank and you tell them you want to make an international payment. You tell them, how much is this going to cost me? Oh, we don't know. How much money is going to be delivered? Oh, we don't know, because there's no messaging, right? The money is just sort of pushed down a pipe and eventually something will come out the other side. And a significant fraction of payments that don't fail still the customer calls to check on the payment because they don't know, because they'll tell you it takes 3 to 6 business days. So when do you call them? And, there's this saying, like, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. Well, we got 2 better mousetraps, where payments are still awful. So I think, we have the technology to allow every financial institution on the planet to settle with every other financial institution in a compatible jurisdiction in any asset in seconds for less than a penny. Just think about this. Anyone who's made a payment knows that we're nowhere near that today. But imagine every financial institution settling with every other financial institution in seconds for less than a penny, any asset. That's fundamentally transformative We have the technology to do it. Now we just need to figure out how to drive the adoption. And I think what we realize with proof of work is that proof of work creates another set of stakeholders. Miners are stakeholders, right? Their interests are often averse to the interests of the people who just want to use the system. Miners may like a low transaction rate because that makes transactions scarce, which increases transaction fees, which their revenue is based on. And it's kind of ironic that the pitch in Bitcoin was be your own bank and no intermediaries, but miners are stakeholders in the ecosystem. They want, they have interests, and their interests are not the same as the interests of the people who are using the system. And enterprise readiness is something that we've spent probably 5 years as a major focus of saying, how can we take these technologies that work great for consumers most of the time? Like Bitcoin blockchain sometimes doesn't produce a block for an hour. Happens, bad luck. How do you build systems that hide that? And one of the annoying things is like 10% of the problem is when everything works fine. 90% of the problem is all the weird things that can go wrong. And sort of building that enterprise focus, I think, is something that it takes a company with, a number of engineers who know what they're doing. It was very audacious for us in the early days. We're going to build the software that goes right into the bank's transaction processing system. But I think what we realize now is that that's a fantastic asset to have your software right in the transaction processing system where real money moves,